How's it going?
Oh, great. It's very
Awesome.
great to see you here.
Yeah, likewise. You have a very nice backdrop. I can see reflections of a big city.
Yeah, this is like sort of the big city. I'm in Queens, so it's not
Okay.
quite the big city. Like I can see the
Right.
big city down there, but yeah,
Right. That's cool.
yeah.
That's good to see you. Yeah, big fan. I guess we're first time callers on the show, but it's good to see you. For people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, absolutely. I am Ciro, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bauplan. I spent most of my days. Well, I have a weird story, but okay. So I did a lot of natural language processing when it was still hard, and then I built a company out of that. Sold that company, led AI and ML acquiring company from scale up to IPO. Built a lot of data systems really to support analytics and ML. And then kind of like my team, the same team that built like the first company was called Tuso, and we kind of like collectively decided that it was a good way to spend our days to build like the next gen data platform because like most of our days were actually spent in data engineering and figuring out how to prepare the data for ML. And then it was like this tiny bit when, you do the model, and that's the fun part. But, most of my days were actually fairly miserable. Um,
Excited to build a whole
I'm not going to
company now.
sugarcoat. I mean, I get that. That's very funny. You like you have 17 data scientists. It goes like, so what do I do? It's like, well, there's a bunch of raw data there, so you can start from there
Mm,
if you want.
yep.
Yeah.
Pick up the shovel, start digging. So,
I mean, it's a very common story. Like it's
yeah.
not a terribly unique story like in data engineering, but it's really important to have that layer like down, and so like
Oh
we
yeah. I mean, that's how I
yeah.
found myself in data engineering. I was doing ML and data science stuff, but lo and behold, data it's a hard problem. So
And also like I think like I understand that now like like one third of our economy is driven by AI apparently, but AI really became simpler for developers. In fact, there's like a bunch of software developers who now like can like tap into this unbounded inferential intelligence that you have. It was just unthinkable just a few years ago, but data kind of didn't. So
yeah,
like that still remains like very much like a hurdle, and even that population that now gets more acquainted with AI applications because it becomes like more software engineering friendly. You can tap into that with an API. They don't necessarily have a background. Like no, not many software engineers will have like a strong background in data. Certainly not a lot of knowledge with big data systems like distributed systems and so on. And so it's a bit of a foreign world for them, and so
hmm
that's what I mean by data. I think like didn't become like exponentially easier compared to AI.
yeah. Was that the incentive behind um, starting on Bauplan and creating that?
Yeah, I think like when we started Bauplan, so the last thing we did in really ML world was I might this might be true. I'm not sure it's like 100% true, but like it certainly was like possibly the first fine tuning of a large language model. So we did with this fine tuning work for Clip. It was just out at the time for information retrieval specifically, and we can like fine tune that on one specific domain, which was fashion. We were working in a company that was doing search and recommendation as a service for large e-commerce, right? So we partnered up with the folks at Farfetch that had like a gigantic data set, and we're just like, well, we can see how to do that. And that was like very cool. It was not super popular when we did it, and then ChatGPT came out, and the model got downloaded like 9 million times in like a month.
Yeah.
But that kind of gave us like one final insight. We already had that impression with Bert, but the point was like, yo, modeling is becoming like 100% commoditized. Like this is going to become like tap water, and we spent most of our days like really around data, and so we started thinking about like if this is the case, we need to rethink like some aspects of the data stack and especially the developer experience. I think Bablan came initially very much as a love letter to developer experience,
Mm.
and we were just like we need to build something that is more apt to this world that is coming where people will tap into this through APIs. And so it needs to be like more software engineering friendly, more code first, frankly. And so we focused on certain design choices there. But the motivation for the data, for building like a new data platform, essentially was this. It was like, we need a data platform now for this next generation of workloads and really developers that are coming.
Mm-hmm. What is Bauplan?
So Bablan is a Lakehouse platform. So, which is our best way to describe what Bablan is. Bablan is a bit unusual compared to what is, like the big data world has made us used to. So Bablan is effectively a way for you to have like some data in S3 and put them in a table format. So in this case, like we support Iceberg, and then run good old pipelines and queries on it. So it's really the bread and butter of data engineering. Our use cases are mostly data transformation. It's like data quality testing, a lot of write, audit, publish pattern. And the entire idea is like you should be able to do that with like 5 APIs that are
Right.
code first and are built on the concept that your data lake should be as transactional as possible for you to be able to have this kind of like Git experience on your data. There's a lot of work that we did on runtime because a lot of the problems of data, I think like developer experience kind of boils down to the runtime.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have to describe the platform today as a way for you to treat data as software in a managed platform that abstracts away entirely your data infrastructure. So our ICP today are companies that do need analytics, do need a data stack. They don't see a terrible amount of value in building a large data platform team because it's not distinctive enough for them, and they want to kind of like lower the bar inside of their organization for people to be able to do data engineering work. And we focus on this segment of the market right now that I think is left alone in this moment. That is, if you are a company that outgrew your Postgres, you built something like in a kind of like modern data stack place, and you want to get out of the warehouse and go on a more Lakehouse open architecture. There are not many options for you actually. That's just kind of weird, but like there's a lot of tools, but there's not many end-to-end options. You kind of have to go Databricks, which is great. Like Databricks is a phenomenal platform, but it's also a platform that more and more it's obviously built for JP Morgan now, right? Like that's where the market is going for them. And that's the entire bulk of new features goes very enterprise. And so if you're like a developer first, tech savvy company to move fast and you want to kind of like a simpler, more software engineering friendly mode code first experience, you kind of have to build it. But you don't want to because what am I going to build? Like another data platform that is going to be pretty much like the same as the one that I built in my previous company, or the one that is not distinctive enough for their business. So that's our ICP is a mid-sized company that finds that things like Databricks are a bit too much, and they don't want to do AWS.
Right. Yeah, I noticed under the hood, right? So you got Iceberg running, but you don't have Spark, which I thought was
We don't have Spark. No.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That is so the Spark thing. I don't want to be too contrarian here, but the point is so back in the days, we had this long running thing about the reasonable scale in ML. So those are the good old days of like the early MLOps stuff.
yep.
And our argument was most of the conferences where we're doing like recommender system in search. You go in a conference, you go at KDD, you go at NeurIPS, or you go at Rexis, the Sigmod, and you get like all these SIGIR, sorry. And you get all these papers from Amazon that are going to tell you just like, oh, we did this. And nobody else has this problem because nobody else is Amazon.
Right.
And so both from the engineering and the business side, so you had like all these papers saying things like, like we improved like 0.1% the FRR on the recommender system and we made $3 billion. So like, cool, but that's not, just like, because my life is very different.
Right.
And so we started this thing, it was called the reasonable scale. It was like, you do not need a bigger boat. We kind of collectively build our infrastructures out of the big data moment using technologies that were created by companies that had an insane amount of data. And everybody else had a lot of data, but not nearly the same volume.
Right.
And we kind of like floored the infrastructure to this, unique cases. And then the rest of us are just doing like these pipelines that are like at most 40 gigabytes. And just like, do I need now a complex distributed system to run most of my pipelines in the cloud? Or can I just like simplify a lot my mental model and my development model around that? And then sure, if I have like one massive pipeline, you should totally do Spark. But to do it like all the time, and I think like a number of things that happened since then in the industry go in that direction. Like DuckDB, the popularity of DuckDB, I take is definitely in that direction. Or polars as a way to like make more efficient like Python processing compared to the previous generation of single-threaded things like pandas, go in that direction. Like more and more people are kind of like realizing that the amount of data you process grew, but not as much as the size of a box in the cloud. Like that grew more. Yeah. So that's why we kind of like stay away from Spark. And I guess my CTO kind of hates Java, so that also doesn't help.
That's the real reason. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything to get away from the JVM. No,
So there might be some religious belief there.
I mean, you joke, but that seems to be sort of the. I think the shtick right now is people are, if you're going to build new, you're probably not building on the JVM. You're probably going to go to Rust or something like that, or
Yeah.
And I guess Python 3.14, they just got rid of the GIL, so that it's going to open up a lot of opportunities, I think, for.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, like we recently, for instance, like we recently shifted to data fusion for our query engine, because like with Bablan you can do both synchronous and asynchronous jobs. And like initially we embedded DuckDB, now we support also data fusion. So we see that there's a lot of that is going in the direction of just like I don't necessarily need to do Spark all the time.
Right.
Very
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good design decision. Because I always, and that's why I think with Iceberg, I mean, myself, I won't spin it up. It just seems very, very, very complex. I'll just use DuckDB or something like that. But it was a Spark overhead too. That I'm like, cool, I gotta do that. And seems a bit unwieldy.
well. Like when we started, also, I think like when we started like dabbling with this concept like 2 years ago, even like things like by Iceberg were like really in their infancy.
Yeah.
So that ecosystem I think is getting like progressively better.
It
So
is.
like we're also building like upon. We did a lot of so in the very beginning we kind of like programmatically talked about what we wanted to do in a VLDB paper that was called Building a Lakehouse from Spare Parts, which effectively means that I don't have enough money to build everything in house, and I'm going to use a lot of open source in the beginning, which it has its own challenges, right? But like I think like also that tool chain in just 2 years like made an enormous leap forward, which is great because like we don't want to fork all the time all things.
So you mentioned this term Git for data.
Yeah.
Can you maybe walk through that?
So Git for data means a couple of things. So it means on the one hand an experience from the developer standpoint. I want that experience, like literally the abstraction that you work with, to be as familiar as possible to your normal software engineering workflow. And so your abstractions should look like Git because like that's how you think about your code. And now you can apply up to a certain extent the same mental model to your data. At a deeper level, that kind of means what is the level of transactionality that we can bring to the Lakehouse? So on the Git for data, like a very simple way of thinking of Git for data is, can I get like multi-table transactionality on a data lake, right? And as of today, I think like there's a bunch of kind of like Git for data has been used like here and there is not I don't think it's a mainstream concept
like
just yet.
And a few others like that. Lakehouse,
Correct.
I think. Yeah.
I think like Lakehouse, and then they're like more in the transactional world, like Neon or Dolt, like introduces this concept of branching, right? But the bottom line is, I think like up until now, this has been like a very loose metaphor. And it's just like, oh, you can create a branch like
Mhm.
Git. It's like, okay, cool. Um, but then the question is like, okay, so what does that mean then when you do it in a system where your runtime and your data they go on their own clock, right? So tools that somehow provide you a so your object your table formats will give you the primitives because they have built-in versioning, right? That's at a table level, and they give you atomicity at the table level. Awesome. So at least I have something like ACID transactionality at the table level, and I can travel back in time. Can I create a branch now? Okay, look, okay, yeah. So I need a higher level abstraction that says I can do this on multiple tables, right? And that looks like a branch. The last piece then becomes when you have these things like Project Nessie, which is the first project that we started from, that enables your true Git for data, but it's not enough because ultimately what you need, the missing piece is the runtime, which basically the question is when I run a pipeline, how can I be sure that the pipeline works like a transaction in a traditional database?
Mm.
Because pipelines fail silently in weird ways. And one of the most annoying problems that you have as a data engineer is a pipeline that sort of failed. They like failed halfway through, right? And so now it's kind of like a Schrodinger cat. It's not that like it's wearable, but it's not really updated. It's just a strange animal that you have to deal with because these problems will propagate, and it takes a few hours or a few days maybe for the downstream consumers to realize that the numbers are off. And now you have to chase this pipeline. It might have touched like hundreds of tables, and you don't quite know what happened. So having transactionality at a pipeline level, I think, is becoming like more and more important because the applications on data becomes like more and more mission critical. And there's really no way to do that in a principled way today. You kind of have to grok it yourself. So the Git for data that we're exploring at Bablan, we're very serious about getting a form of model of that, is really saying, can I approximate as much as possible the concept of a transaction in a database for a pipeline? Because as a data engineer in a data lake, I think in pipelines. I don't necessarily think in tables. I
Right.
don't only think in tables. I don't know if that does resonate. You did this for a long time, so
No, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned, I think, write audit publish earlier too. Is that one way of sort of guaranteeing the transaction, so to speak? Or like, how do you?
I think that is more a use case that people
Yeah.
like. Once you have a system like that, effectively every change you make in your data lake now becomes a commit. And
Right.
if you pair that with your runtime, now you have like nothing happens in your data lake that cannot be in your lake house at that point that you cannot reproduce deterministically. It's a very
Yeah, that
cool
makes
concept and
sense.
very useful
Yeah.
because I read your code, I pack that and I ship it to the cloud and I run it. So I know the version of the code. I also handle the infrastructure, so I know what is the execution context of that job.
Yeah.
And I have this Git abstraction over your iceberg table, so I know the state of your data. So if I want to travel back in time and tell you,
Mm.
hey Joe, I want to do exactly what happened yesterday, I have all the three main pieces, which is like your infra, your code, and your data. Which is what makes, by the way, like debugging data pipeline so annoying is that you in principle don't know what went wrong. It can be the code, it can be the execution, it can be the data, it can be all of it or
Yeah.
some of it. So that is the execution model of our platform. Write audit publish pattern at that point becomes a use case that you can enable at this point with one API call. So
Right.
instead of having like a staging environment that you have to maintain and like make sure that that workflow is built and maintained by you, you literally go for ingestion, for instance, you can literally do just like, hey, Bauplan branch create. That creates a branch. Now you have Parquet files. You need to do, okay, I want to create an iceberg table. So Bablan table create, Bablan table import, run a pipeline, run a bunch of tests. If that works, merge.
Right.
But the point is like everything in our platform happens like that.
Yeah.
Write audit publish is one of the ways in which our customers
Got it.
operationalize that model.
Got it. No, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
Like when you, like for instance, when you run a pipeline. So if you run it, like let's say that you run it like a random pipeline on your Lakehouse, the system will open a branch no matter what, even if you don't see it. Now, if the pipeline goes well, we're going to merge that branch back into, and so nothing, you won't have noticed that. But if the situation that I was describing before occurs, and you have, you know, some problem halfway through, that branch remains open now. Your main data lake, which effectively is your production environment, is where your tables will be read by downstream consumers. That remains intact. It's not updated, fair, but it's better to have something that is a bit late than something broken or inconsistent. And now you have this transactional branch where you can check out to and say, let me check what happened in this branch in terms of the execution environment, the code, and the data. So you have one place where you have all the elements that you need to figure out what happens, right? But that happens every time you write. Like
Yeah.
every write operation will always create a branch, like in Git.
Yeah, and every user gets their own branch, right? I think I saw that.
Branches right now in Bablan are they are namespaced by users,
Okay.
and so. But I think that but the branches today absolve to two main functions. If you're a person and you're developing, that becomes your sandbox. So you
Yeah.
create a branch and now you can work on that. That is kind of like development mode. Is you hacking your new pipeline, modifying a pipeline, do your job on your IDE, iterating. Once that thing is in production, now the branch creation and reconciliation of the Git for data now becomes automated. One of the things that we started from Nessie, right, which had like the good abstractions for like very Git like abstractions. One thing that, for instance, happened to us is this: that we reached a number of commit and branches that were kind of like too much for the original project with one client because they automated that. It's not there's nothing wrong with Nessie. Nessie was built, or I think originally for a person that goes in a UI and creates a branch.
Yeah.
But I remember that was like a few months ago. Like we wake up in the morning and we get like 15,000 branches in a day. And he's like, what is going on? He's like, it's just one dude who just like attached a Lambda now to an ingestion job.
Oh.
And so now this thing is now his thing is machine to machine. So it's a completely different ballgame. It's automation that really gets us excited in that sense. Now we have like transactional automation. So now you can have like your business logic on top of that. You can because everything is code, then you can have your imperative logic and say like, if success, do this. If not success, do that. If debug this branch, like do that. And reagents becomes like even more interesting to see what you can do with a system that speaks natively code,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's entirely transactional.
That's super cool. Let's talk about the agent piece too. That I think is the world we're in, and well, I wouldn't say we're tiptoeing into it right now or entering it
Yeah.
full force. I'm not sure which. But yeah, you mentioned 50,000 branches created. Yeah, I think agents will be interesting. What are your thoughts on where Bauplan fits in with or where agents fit in with Bauplan? Either one.
So I think that today the main so it's without a doubt like the main thing that agents do today is write code. That's we all agreed like all the IDs are making tons of money. That's really the use case. Like when you go on data ops, I think writing code is less of a bottleneck. It's not really the point. Like you don't necessarily. Your problem is not that you have to do 50 pipelines today. The problem is that you're going to change one line in the pipeline, and there's like 100 tables now that
Mm-hmm.
might blow up. And I think like the industry today is not quite there in adopting in more ops heavy agents, but I see this transaction unfolding before my eyes, right? So the first initial thing that I see signs of that is people hooking up Sentry, right? Like you start kind of like moving into a more DevOps world. What I think about our like the data ops piece specifically, I truly believe that data infrastructure works in cycles, and the last cycle has been consolidated. And then there's going to be a new one now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be about building systems that are natively built for AI systems to work with them.
Absolutely.
And that means that you need to have code first platforms. Like every platform that built a moat around a UI doesn't matter that much in a purely agentic world.
Yep.
It needs to be API first, because that's how it needs to be simple, because like the LLM is going to speak those APIs. And it needs to take care of this isolation problem. We are now getting like more and more focused in automating data engineering work.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that compared to, I think, more widespread initial applications of agents with data, which tend to be more automation of what an analyst does, is that a data engineer doesn't only read data, they write. So if I want to automate your work and like really make your life better, this agent needs to write. Nobody in his right mind will let an agent write data in that lake. The reason why we're okay with agents generating our code and handling our file system locally is because I can roll back.
Yep.
But with data, I can't. So we're very bullish on the idea that this Git for data system and this like obsessive transactionality over this disembodied system like a Lakehouse is really a prerequisite for you to have a data platform that is natively hooked to agents. Because you want to have the agent basically do things like self-heal a pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
That means the agent needs to run a pipeline. It needs to write some new iceberg tables. And you definitely want to do that in air gap system, like in an air gap like environment. And you want to have a way to check what the agent did in a commit history. And you want to have a way to roll back. You want to have a way to write verifiers and make sure that the PR that this, so to speak, PR agent writes for presents to you is meaningful and not just like I ran a job and it ran. It's like, okay, but like the table is empty or something like this. But that is like, it's something is like very, very exciting for us. Is kind of like, as I was saying before, like I think we accidentally built the perfect platform for agents. I say accidentally because agents have been a thing for like 24 hours now. So that has been,
Yeah, it seems like you stumbled into that. Like, yeah, and there was that paper that came out from Berkeley, AI overlords and agentic architectures, I think. Very good paper, and it got me thinking as well. Like, what is the next thing? And architectures, as the paper points out. And I urge the audience, please read it. It's a masterpiece. It's not that long either, but it'll get your brain moving pretty hard in terms of what's next. But yeah, the reality is right now, most of the systems we have, whether it's transactional, whether it's analytical, it's not meant for what's coming. Rapid fire agents. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about like the Aditya Parmeswaran paper, and I think like so Matei was also involved in that. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very programmatic paper, and like we were just like chatting with the folks at Berkeley yesterday, actually,
Nice.
about that. And so there, like, I think like there's two things there that we like a lot. So the Git for data, it's not a. By the way, like it's far from being by chance that Aditya is the person who's doing that, because like he has been doing kind of like Git for data explorations when it wasn't cool, like
Right.
before that everybody cared. There's a couple of things there. Like one is the this kind of like concept of isolation and transactionality. So you definitely want to have a system that treats isolation of your data and your runtime as a first class citizen, because now you have these systems that can be independently writing code, writing tables, writing data into your system. First of all, that's great. And I think like the Git for data effort that we're spearheading at Bauplan is definitely that. It's really taking care of that problem. The second thing, which is quite interesting, is the runtime aspect of it. So because like what they envision in that paper, and we honestly start seeing that we have like early customers that are actually using a lot the NCP, and we start seeing that is, although you model your agentic workflow on what a person does, the agent will behave differently. And one thing that they do, well, it depends. Like, it depends if you consider a senior person or an intern. Like, they behave more like an intern. That's what I would say. So, like, what they would do is they are going to run a ridiculous amount of queries that are kind of dumb. And they're going to gradient descent their way progressively to the right one. Because the agent is not really, like, the AI is not really incentivized to be very thoughtful in crafting a long, complex analytical query. They're going to just like keep doing this and then kind of like get it right. That means two things. One means that now you have a system that in analytics is really not it hasn't been the case up until now, where you have like a swarm of agents that are kind of like hitting at the same time the system, which is kind of like more what you're used to in transactional world, right? And so you kind of have to think about like how is the runtime going now? Like how I should I do this? Like because this could bottleneck very, very powerful OLAP system, even Snowflake, by not be able to handle, just like if you have like 300 agents that are kind of like hitting the system at the same time.
I'm sure they would love that for the consumption part.
That's also another point, because like none of the systems right now is really built for you to use an agent and not be bankrupt. But the second thing is these queries will look the same because they change one line at a time. And so these scans are not the same, but they rhyme. Mm-hmm. So you might want to architect your system now in a way that says, I want to have differential caching layers that are very smart, because it becomes very important that you don't write the same byte twice to make sure that your concurrency problem is handled correctly. And these agents will, like the queries that an agent typically produce, will effectively read the same byte so many times, like a stupid amount of times. So you kind of like have to rethink like a lot of the system, and so it's a fantastic paper, and like we're really excited about it. Like,
it was funny on a plane or on a train ride back from Budapest recently. I took that paper and I was like, okay, so this agentic query optimizer, Claude Code, let's write the MD file. Let's build this on the train ride. Built it. It's pretty interesting. So the notion is what you described, 80-90% of the queries are going to be redundant.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be
There's a high throughput and high redundancy.
Yeah. And so it built, it's like, fine, here's the, this is what's great about these tools is you can just prototype stuff like this in record time and just test it out. And so, yeah, exactly. The caching layer, differential caching, what query worked best for this database? Let's use that one for this type of query. Like that's so it gets interesting because in the past things like get were mainly to describe what changed, but now there's this notion of intent that we didn't have before.
I see.
You know what I mean? And that's like that was like a revelation. It's like shit. So we're dealing with semantics now and meaning and perhaps the question of why, like, why did you do this? Not just what did you change, but also like,
that's another, I think like in data, like the entire semantic layer will probably need to change like pretty radically to accommodate this.
It will, because it's only made for analytics right now. It's not made for agents. And I was thinking about this the other day, writing this whole section on ontologies right now for my book, and I'm writing a book on data modeling, but that's like ontologies. I wonder what changes with that as well. When you're dealing with agents, I don't know. This is all new territory, and I don't think
they could be like,
building it. You're building it, working out on it. So.
Yeah, like we're building towards that future for sure. Because like we think like that there's like the customers that we have ultimately, like as I said, like the real practical point that we solve here is you do not want to have your own data platform team.
Correct.
Like you don't want to spin like an entire data platform team just to run like analytics at a Series D company. Like that makes no sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, it made sense up until now, but like going forward, like I think like nobody really sees a lot of value in that. Like the tool chain is consolidating enough, so that you're going to try to have like more domain experts, more people that are closer to the business value, and then the
Yeah.
engineers will support that, but you want to keep that function smaller. So like what I expect in the next years is that you're going to have more compute consumptions on your data platforms, but fewer people in your data team. Like teams will shrink, their budget will grow. Now, if you map that onto the agent world, you have companies that are kind of like hoping that the future will be, hey, I have a data guy and this guy has 300 agents. And now I can go a long way with one, two, three, with very small and very, very efficient teams, as opposed to staffing an entire platform team. Because the model of having a central platform team, and I know that this has been like around for a long time in data. You have I really love the part of your book about that, by the way. Is just like thinking about, like, we kind of always thought of this as a socio technological problem where you go like, how do you organize your teams and how do you organize the SLAs around the data if you want to decentralize? What is the right balance between fully centralized and decentralized? And there's not a really good answer for that. But one thing for sure is that once your data platform team becomes hypertrophic, it becomes gigantic, that's usually slows everything down. Like what I've seen in my personal career is that you throw bodies at this problem because you always need more data engineers, and things actually slow down, which is like super annoying because like you're actually like doubling your budget and you get like more people and things slow down because like now everybody's in a queue to talk to the central team. So it's very important, I think, that moving forward, if we want to bring AI for data systems, that we really fulfill this specific promise. And it's like you can keep that team super lean. I can make your data engineers like 100 times more efficient, and their job now is to orchestrate this swarm of agents, which is kind of cool and sci-fi. But I think that's what I'm probably
Oh,
what's
it's
gonna.
coming. It's coming. And, as somebody who, I think helped train a whole generation of data engineers, through my books and courses and stuff, it's, that's a big question in my mind too, is what is a data engineer in 3 to 5 years, right? That's where my mind is, and that's what I'm focusing on right now. I don't really care about the world of the past anymore. That's been done. But this whole world, we get to create it. But the workflow of a data engineer, right? It's something I think about every day. Like, what is it? And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the cat's out of the bag, the toothpaste out of the tube, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But it's like, this is the world we're going towards, whether we like it or not. I mean, every company in the universe right now is chomping at the bit to try and do agents, but we're not there technologically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like
Yeah,
like you can tell, like agents can be like very useful for a number of things. Like I think like there's not going to be like if you're like on a more traditional platform, and you have like a bunch of agents that are especially like geared towards like less technical. So there's several ways of thinking about that. Like I saw, for instance, like stuff like agent bricks, which is
yeah,
obviously cool. Like I have in my mind at least like 50 people that I personally know that can use that tomorrow,
sure,
and none of them is an engineer though.
right,
Like they tend to be like more like business people, and now like you really lower the bar to access of data and like standardizes certain workflows, which is absolutely amazing.
yeah,
My experience with that is that you're lowering the bar is usually needs to be, and I might be wrong because like I don't know what happens in the future, but like lowering the bar to the final consumer really brings business value, but you are successful if you pair that with a bit more boring but principled way to deal with the part of your data that you don't necessarily see.
right,
Because otherwise it becomes like kind of a little bit of anarchy. Or I think like BI is a good example of that. You had like this season at a certain point where you were just like plug a BI tool onto your raw data in the data lake and you're off the races, which is true. And now I have a million things that are buried inside my Looker and my Tableau instance. And the moment I want to open this up to the rest of the company, it's like, oh, damn, I don't know what to do now. Like this stuff is
yeah,
kind of tribal now. So you see, I think like you want to maintain the possibility of having like agents that are more like UI friendly for non-technical people. But really what we're interested in as a company is what does the runtime and the data management behind that look like for a world
Absolutely.
where for one human, I have to budget for at least 50 agents? That's really kind of, is kind of like a more platform and deeper technological
Yep.
question. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I think what you're getting at with Bauplan solves a major problem that it's sort of like in the fall I go up and chop wood in the mountains in Wyoming, and chainsaws have a guard in them for a good reason, right? But you take that off, and that's kind of what I feel like a lot of these early low effort vibe coding tools are like for the average civilian. It's like you can build cool stuff, but the safeguards under the hood, especially with data, and we can barely get it right today with doing regular good old BI. Still, we're struggling with data
Yeah,
management
yeah. Oh,
issues,
yeah.
right? And so,
Oh, yeah.
oh, cool. Now we'll just unleash, Bob in accounting who has no technical expertise or data, savvy, and he's just going to build a new app. Cool. You can imagine the chaos that will ensue from that. So, I mean, so
Because it
it
also
seems like
it sort
Valplan
of
does
gets
it.
paradoxical, right? Because like
Hmm.
the more you empower, we have a client that has this I think like they're going through the process of figuring this out today. Is like I really, really, really want to empower that person that will never run an SQL query. It's like
Hmm.
great. The possibility that that person will immediately figure out whether a number is off decreases with his technical expertise and his knowledge of the data that is behind it. So the more you disintermediate this person with the LLM, the more he's empowered to just asking a question, the more he's gonna treat this thing as an oracle. And if like that's why I like a semantic layer, I think is the other thing that we're not focusing on semantic layer at Bauplan, like we're an infrastructure company. But that's another thing that I think is very exciting now, is how do we bring that to a world where we kind of I'm okay, like I'm expecting my executives to kind of like trust this thing now
Yeah.
because it's very compelling and it's very simple to use.
It was interesting. I was leading a discussion with a bunch of data and business leaders in London, Big Data London, and somebody brought up this point of data governance is going to be really important too, whether you call it semantic layer, whether you call it whatever. So this person illustrated a point where their company uses Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah.
Copilot is the way that everyone's talking to their data right now, but it's an absolute heaping mess right now because Lord knows what the hell they're querying with Copilot. It's just, whatever happens to be in SharePoint. And they're like, yeah, that looks great. Or I don't know.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, who knows? Exactly.
yeah, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
scary because people are making decisions off of like, who the fuck knows what's in there? I don't know. You don't know. And so, yeah.
It is like this is the same problem that we had before with BI. Like this
Oh,
is
yeah.
not a no problem. It's just it might be at a broader magnitude, but it is ultimately a problem that we have been having for a
Yep.
while.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Super fun.
yeah. I know, but like like I think the other thing that I think like is I'm kind of like is that I am sure that I can certainly think about my system as a system that is built for this like natively, and I also am kind of like learning how people use my MCU server every day
Hmm.
in bizarre ways, because like there's also this thing that I might be, yeah, I might be old, man, like like I like my imagination of how I can use an AI system in my everyday work might be a bit limited. That's what I'm saying.
Mm.
Like all the users that we have on the platform today, they're like real younger and like really AI native in the way they work. They do surprising things, and they really demand. I think like they put a lot of trust in the AI system because the entire workflow of the developer is that loop,
Hmm.
which is also kind of like a very nice and hypnotic loop when you work like with Cloud Code. And so kind of like a tangent of that brave new world that is coming is you probably like it would make sense to have systems that don't ask you to get out of the loop.
Right.
You want to stay there because like you do everything there now at this point. Like at a certain point, you're going to do everything there, and it becomes like very simple for you to just like stay in that flow.
Hmm.
It's not great if I now have to leave this and just go on AWS to just like check like CloudWatch because like it kind of disrupts your pocket of focus there.
Hmm. Are you using tools like Cloud Code?
Yeah, everybody in the company uses essentially Cloud Code. We're like great users of that. I
That's
think
cool.
like I think like we tried kind of everything for a few months and then we just like consolidated naturally on Cloud Code. Yeah, but definitely.
How has it changed your thinking of building products?
Well, like we are mostly backend people, so
Yeah.
you're like our Cloud Code for us is really a boost in productivity in getting rid of a number of things that you have to do when you just like build your first like when you just code like you have like a bunch of like boilerplate stuff you don't want to do anymore and like getting really efficient at that is actually like a lot of work because when you do like backend stuff you're gonna have like a lot of boilerplate things that need to be in place for you to
Yeah.
work effectively and those things need to be like also I mean particularly like well written and well designed because like this is a backend service. I think like we because of the nature of what we do we saw less the power of vibe coding. Like we don't build like applications, like front end application very often or things like this. Like most of the folks in my team are basically kind of like hardcore infra people.
Right.
So for us, like it's mostly that. It's just like getting rid of an insane amount of code that otherwise you have to kind of like copy and paste, and like change and like make sure that it works. Oh, I forgot a semicolon. Oh, this like that kind of
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
That's cool. And then do you have like in your development cycles, do you have your own Lakehouse that you're testing against?
Well, like our development, like we have like our own kind of like Bauplan essentially,
Yeah.
where we test everything against, and then we have, I think like we have now a playground, which is kind of a place where anything goes, and then you have like several layers of like dev, QA, and prod for a main environment that uses as a sandbox, and
Yeah.
then you have the environments for the clients because Bablan is not multi-tenant. So most of our clients, I think, like one of the cool things about the Lakehouse is that you keep your data, right? I don't have to migrate into whatever storage format or whatever system I want to use just to run queries. That kind of ties back also with the fact that even like if companies of all sizes become like very savvy around that and become just like okay is great, but like I also want to. I'm not super sure about sending the data around. So for us, like we design the system in a way that you basically have a Bablan box per client today.
Hmm.
You have an S3 bucket. You pair that bucket with a private link to a runner, and that runner will process the data for you. Every job inside of our runtime is an ephemeral function that we take care of creating, spinning up, running, and then destroy, and then we stream the data as an arrow stream to the next one.
Yeah.
So the data just like lives in the memory of a process and then just disappears into nothingness, and all the states of the system are persisted in your S3, which is also nice because like if people really don't like me, they can get rid of me like easily. And it's like, which, like at a certain point, we will have to find a way to lock everybody in, like all the evil corporations. But like for now, this is actually a value proposition for us. And so I think like, the single tendency, like our deployments are basically like this. Like every customer will have like his own kind of like Babylon box.
That's super cool. Kind of closing out, like what are you excited about over the next year?
I'm super excited about this agent stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't be more excited about that. Like I just came out of like a call with a small company that kind of like give me a glimpse of the future, because like they were very adamant about the fact that I'm using Cloud Code for everything, and I don't want to, like, I don't see why I shouldn't be using Cloud Code for also doing my data. And it was like, I would say like most people are not that draconian now. But this morning I just saw these guys going, it's like, oh yeah, this is happening. Like this, like they're too used to this. Like this guy like does everything with AI, just like, grocery shops with AI, writes his code with AI, like does everything with AI. So like, he doesn't see why my platform should be an exception in his life.
Yeah.
So like, we're really excited about that. Yeah.
That's super cool. For people who want to learn more about you, how can they find you?
We're extremely easy to find because we tend to be friendly people, and we are on LinkedIn all the time. You can go on bauplanlabs.com. If you want to try out our sandbox, you just like sign up, and you're gonna get an API key, and you can try out our initial sandbox MVP. We're not generally available just quite yet, but we're in production with early clients. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm literally like the easiest guy to find, like to reach out to in the world. Just like send me an email, drop me a line on LinkedIn. I'm mostly on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
So again, I'm old. I don't do TikTok.
You're not on TikTok.
I'm not on TikTok now.
Okay, me neither.
No. Oh, you're not? Okay. That's reassuring.
That might change soon. It depends. Yeah, I don't. It's just one more thing.
And I'm honestly like very worried about like media that I deep inside I know I don't understand. Like it's just like I consume this, but this is not exactly like my daily life, so I don't know if I can. It takes a while to get adjusted to like new ways of
Yeah, it is.
communicating.
I mean, I got kids; they're teenagers, so they always send me reels and Instagram, and that takes up a lot of my time. And we have a very similar sense of humor, so which is kind of cool to see your kids having.
How old are your kids?
Almost 13, and the other one's 15. So
okay,
just at that age, right? So they're but they're hilarious. I think the older one's gonna do stand-up comedy, but he's
nice.
Hilarious. But yeah, the video. So then I find myself getting sucked into Instagram Reels and just watching reel after reel after reel. Then I wake up and I'm like, cool. I guess I should get some work done now. Stay off
like
it
it's
if you
3
can.
a.m. now.
Go read a book or something crazy like that. But but cool. Well, if I'm ever in New York, I'll have to go grab a bite or a drink. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Come over and I mean, you're in Utah, so like the winter is not gonna scare you off.
No,
you're
in Queens though, right? Is that where you're based out of? Or?
So I'm based like I don't know how much you know New York, but like the big Pepsi sign on the river. That's where I am.
Nope.
So just like one hop from the island, I can see the island, but I enjoy the quiet of not being quite inside of the island.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Astoria back in the day. So.
Oh, okay, like up northern, yeah. But like Manhattan is great, but like as Tom Waits said, it's like a ship, but the water is on fire. So after a while, it gets a bit too much.
It's exhausting after a bit, man. I can only spend a couple of days in Manhattan. I'm just like, get me out of here.
That is such a cool town, man. I don't think I'm gonna. Yeah, it's such a cool town.
Awesome show. Well, have a good weekend.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah,
have a good one.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.